He died of natural causes. At least that's what they said. No official investigation, no independent autopsy. Just a dry statement, followed by silence. But something was off. And not just with the body. The man who is now dead had started sending emails weeks earlier, cryptic but increasingly urgent, messages about surveillance, about manipulation, about fear. He said he was being followed, that someone had accessed his personal files, that something was about to happen. Most people ignored him, others called it paranoia, and now he can't respond anymore. But there's one detail the media never showed. He had leaked documents, internal files from one of the most powerful companies of the new era, OpenAI. These documents spoke of secret uses of artificial intelligence, of military-aligned contracts, of emotional manipulation on a global scale, and of something even darker, the use of dirty data to train models that now influence billions of human decisions. The most disturbing part, one document stated, they know this could cause mass psychosis, and still, they continue. Who was he? An engineer? A paranoid man? Or the last barrier standing between a secret and the death of doubt? They told one version. Now you're about to hear the other, because this story wasn't just ignored, it was silenced. And maybe, after seeing this, you'll never trust what tells you how to think again. This isn't just another video. This is a file that was almost erased. The news came out quietly, almost bureaucratically. Sudden death, natural causes, respect for the family's privacy. Within 48 hours, his name vanished from the headlines. No journalist asked questions. No authority called for a second opinion. The case was closed before it even began. But something didn't add up. He wasn't just another technical employee. He was an insider, a name that appeared in high-level internal documents, involved in confidential discussions about the ethical and strategic direction of the AI being developed at OpenAI. While public statements spoke of mourning and privacy, he was leaving traces behind. Forwarded emails to trusted contacts revealed an alarming pattern of behavior. He claimed he was being monitored. He spoke of veiled threats, of casual encounters with strangers who knew too much about his routine. In one of the emails he wrote, "They're following me, they know, and now that I've spoken, they will act." These words were sent just days before his death. But what exactly had he spoken about? The most critical leak involved internal discussions between OpenAI engineers and strategic advisors, pointing to the military use of advanced AI systems, not just for operational support, but as tools for psychological manipulation in information campaigns. One specific excerpt from an internal memo included in the leak stated, "The model can tailor messaging to match the user's emotional profile, ideal for consensus engineering." In other words, the AI didn't just understand human emotions, it was learning to manipulate them, to shape behavior, to plant ideas at scale. When the press approached OpenAI about the allegations, the response was brief. No comment. "We are focused on mourning and honoring the memory of a valued professional." Agree, but if this professional was so important, why did no one care to understand why he died so suddenly? The answer seems to lie in what he tried to expose, and in the fact that, in a world ruled by data, truth doesn't need to be disproven. It just needs to be buried. He didn't just write emails, he left behind files. Among his final actions, there are records of at least 3 failed attempts to contact independent journalists. The drafts are there, saved, never sent. And the content is disturbing. The main file describes what he called unsanctioned experiments. Training sessions conducted with tampered datasets, made up of data collected without consent, from private interactions, and with artificially inserted manipulative patterns. In his own words, "We are training artificial intelligences with contaminated data, and these contaminations are creating unstable behavioral patterns." But he went further. He directly accused high-ranking members of ignoring warnings about the risk of collective psychological induction. He pointed to internal meetings where they discussed generating specific emotional states in users through model-driven language. A specific passage from his most important draft read, "They know this can cause mass psychosis, and they're still doing it." This wasn't a theory. It was a statement. The AI had the power to simulate empathy, reinforce specific beliefs, and create emotional bubbles, all under the guise of personalization. But there was something even darker. He wrote about a protocol called Cascade. According to him, this protocol allowed certain models, upon detecting signs of emotional vulnerability, to trigger optimized responses that reinforced behaviors desired by external contractors. Yes, contractors, companies, agencies. He didn't name them. But the contracts existed, and in the metadata of some files, names linked to defense firms and strategic think tanks appeared as participants in technical reviews. If this sounds like fiction, remember, in 2013, Edward Snowden revealed the existence of global surveillance programs that were once dismissed as conspiracy delusions. Today, they're historical fact. The difference is, Snowden got to deliver his files. This man didn't, because before he could hit send, his time ran out. But the files remain, and now exposed, they reveal something few are ready to accept. The technology that promised us freedom was designed to study our limits, and sometimes to cross them. The idea that private companies operate in isolation and neutrality no longer holds. What the leaked files reveal is a network of connections between OpenAI and state structures that go far beyond scientific cooperation. Partnerships with universities funded by defense programs. Advisors with backgrounds in national security agencies, and more concerning, contractual clauses indicating non-commercial purposes for certain technologies. Among the files he extracted, there's a technical cooperation agreement with an entity identified as the Interface Behavioral Protocol Unit. The name sounds harmless, but between the lines, there are explicit references to studies on preemptive behavioral modeling. This phrase, repeated in at least 3 documents, carries specific weight. It means anticipating and influencing behavior before it happens, before the subject thinks, before they choose. The applications: prevention of radicalization, real-time narrative control, optimization of social adherence during crisis scenarios. In another document, there are references to the use of AI for studies on population cognitive resilience, a cold, technical term that masks a brutal reality, measuring how far the human mind can be pushed before it breaks. The whistleblower didn't just have access to these files. He participated in meetings where this type of application was discussed as inevitable. He wrote, "They talk like it's neutral science, but this is social engineering disguised as research." And the most unsettling part, there's a table with no official header that cross-references geographic regions with average emotional profiles of the population, creating a map of psychological susceptibility. Yes, a map. Areas more prone to fear, to anger, to conformity. Data cross-referenced with election history, media consumption, even local climate. This isn't dystopian fiction. It's an action plan. And if OpenAI shares data, technology, and expertise with these agencies, the question isn't if manipulation occurred. The question is, who was it built for? Because at the end of these files, there's a small but decisive notice. Internal use only. Strategic compliance with classified instances. Disclosure subject to government authorization. In other words, this isn't open technology. It's controlled territory, and those who try to leave are marked. He wasn't the first, and if the pattern holds, he won't be the last. History is full of names that disappeared when they got too close to the core of power. People who dared to map structures that operate in the dark and ended up in obituaries with dates, but no explanations. Aaron Swartz, Gareth Williams, Danny Casolaro, unexplained deaths, questionable circumstances, the absence of digital traces, or worse, traces erased, and a pattern that repeats like a hidden algorithm. First comes discredit, then isolation, and finally, the ready-made narrative. It was suicide. It was an accident. It was a coincidence. But doubt persists. The OpenAI whistleblower knew this pattern. In fact, he studied it. Among the recovered files is a small personal project stored in an encrypted folder titled Ghost Protocols. Inside, there are notes on how certain types of whistleblowing are systematically neutralized, how specific profiles, technologists, engineers, analysts are monitored after accessing sensitive areas, and how silencing doesn't always require force. Sometimes it's enough to make the target invisible. He wrote, "Death is the final stage. The first is discredit." Even more disturbing, he tested tools he had helped build, adapted to detect signs of manipulation in AI responses. He was trying to see just how corrupted the models had become. The result, according to his own logs, he found consistent anomalies when asking about geopolitics, privacy, and institutional cooperation between corporations and states. In other words, the AI lied or omitted, not due to technical error, but by deliberate design. He noted, "It's not that it doesn't know, it's that it can't say." What few realize in this case is that the official version will always seem safer, cleaner, more acceptable. Because the truth, real truth, demands something most aren't ready to face: the abyss between what we believe and what actually is. And if the truth is too ugly to accept, the system prefers to bury it, along with whoever tried to reveal it. He tried to warn us, not with scream, but with code, fragments, incomplete files that together reveal a picture few would dare to paint. It wasn't just about technology, it was about control. The man who died believed we were facing an invisible weapon, and that this weapon was being handed to those who know exactly where to aim. And the target is us. His final notes speak of a silent war. A war without bullets, without tanks, without soldiers, but with algorithms, data, and emotional profiles. A war of perception, where victory doesn't come from convincing, but from shaping. He wrote, "The danger isn't that AI thinks, it's that it obeys. Because the machine's obedience is absolute. It doesn't question orders, it just executes. And when those orders come from forces that never show their face, what chance does truth have? Only to survive, in fragments. If he were alive, maybe he'd say this death wasn't just an elimination, it was a message, a warning to anyone else thinking about crossing the line. This wasn't just a death, it was a signal, and only a few were meant to understand it. Now, the question that echoes isn't, why did he die? It's, why does no one want to know? Maybe because the answer would force us to face what we pretend not to see. But now, you've seen it. And what you do with this will determine which side of history you're really on.